My name's Rahteah Parsons. I have lots of friends. My boyfriend's name is Grant.
Rahteah was very quiet, approached things very cautiously. She worked better alone. She found the large groups very noisy, and she was kind of sensitive.
Is it over yet?
She always constantly had a smile on her face. She was always happy. One of those babies I think people hope for. I was the first person to hold her in my arms. Very little crying, but always a sense of wonder. Hey, Ozzy. Yeah, what a good boy. I got that dog from Rahteah, actually. She said that there was a pug at the SPCA and he was abandoned. I'm glad Rahteah volunteered there because that's where he came from. He's a chattery dog. She was very intelligent. When she was 13 years old, you know, she was reading Jane Goodall books. There's all these preteen magazines everywhere, but Rahteah would be the one who goes in and looks at the science section, you know, for an astronomy magazine so she can learn about black holes. I have no idea where that came from. It certainly didn't come from me.
Come on in, Clyde. Oh, no, Frankie. Come here, Frankie. You get to come in, George. Rahteah actually worked to rehabilitate many dogs in this house. These are all rescued dogs from different situations. We've rescued 700 dogs. This is Rahteah's favorite dog right here. Jazzy. She even has her little thing on today. Justice for Rahteah.
It's a very different name. Tell me how she got her name.
So when I was about 12, my niece's name was Heather. So I spelled Heather backwards, and I was like, Rahteah, that's nice.
And did she like her name?
She loved her name. She's very proud of her name. When she was about 12, I found that was the age that she challenged me most. She was very strong-willed. She was the reason I went to university. 2 degrees, so I did 7 years straight. She was my driving force and my focus. Then we moved here when she started school, and
Cole Harbour is the biggest suburb of Dartmouth. Pretty much a typical suburb in every way. There isn't as much to do there as there is if you live downtown, but there are a ton of kids and teenagers living there, and there's a big hockey culture there. I don't know if you know, Sidney Crosby is from Cole Harbour.
this is her junior high school. She came out of this school with straight A's, and then she started at Cole Harbour High.
Cole Harbour High is a pretty big high school. It's had some problems in the past, but there isn't that much to set the high school apart.
Even though you have the same friends your whole life, other schools are filtered into that high school. So now you have this diverse group, and she met a new friend there.
This was a Wednesday night, and I remember it because she was sitting in my car. High school just started, how's everything going? You know, we always had these discussions. I said, who are you going to this party with? And she mentioned the girl's name, and I said, was that a new friend of yours? I've never heard that name before. And she's like, yeah, it's a new friend of mine. I said, okay. And I remember this just clear as day. Are you the friends with you, the kind of friends who are going to make sure you're okay? And she said, yeah, of course they are. Of course they're okay. She got out of the car, and really, you know, the next time I saw my daughter, she was not my daughter anymore.
She asked if she could have a sleepover at this girl's house, and I agreed that she could.
Something really traumatic happened to her.
They went over to these boys' house.
I had no idea that it was going to turn into a party, but they offered vodka. She started drinking vodka straight.
I was going home to visit my mom in Ottawa. We were sitting on a plane. I got a text message from Rahteah, and it said, I need to come live with you. And I said, Rahteah, you know, I'm texting you back. Are you okay? Is everything all right? And I texted her. I said, I'm on the plane, and we're starting to move.
My sister said, you need to come home right away. I said, why? And she said, Rahteah is here, and she needs you. And Rahteah was curled up in the kitchen in a ball, rocking herself back and forth. She just said everything that she could remember. Her and her friend went to another friend's home where 2 boys lived, and they were there hanging out. 2 other guys had stopped in that were friends of the 2. They got vodka, and she really didn't know the effects of what that alcohol was going to do to her. She remembers being led upstairs. She remembers them taking turns on top of her. And she remembers hitting her head on the window because she started to throw up. And she does remember somebody saying, take a picture, take a picture. The next morning, she woke up in a different room between the two other males that were in the house. She didn't put the pieces together right away.
Rahteah's mom called me, and she said, I need to tell you something. I said, okay. And she goes, you really need to sit down and get ready, because she said, this is the worst. And, you know, so I said, okay, you know, what's wrong? And she said that when Rahteah went to that sleepover, they went down the street to another house, and there was boys there, and they raped her. I just wanted Rahteah to know, I said, you know, I love you, and this is going to be okay. We'll get through this. The story came out that Rahteah was a slut on Tuesday at school, and they're all bragging about it. Rahteah Parsons slept with 4 guys. So her reputation right there in school, I mean, it spread like wildfire, and that's when she contacted me, and she was just in a panic, like she couldn't believe this happened. She doesn't even remember anything that happened.
She got to school, realized that everybody was talking about her and that something had happened, and then found out when she was at school that this photo, which she didn't even know existed, had been texted around from kid to kid, and that a lot of people had seen it already.
Someone came up to her and said, did you see the picture? I can't believe that picture of you, and you're a slut.
He decided to start spreading the photograph around. This is me, and this is Rahteah Parsons, and I'm having sex with her as she hangs out a window throwing up. Man, it's hard for me to get my head around how someone could do something so sick like that.
Right there, you really think that someone throwing up wants to have sex?
She found out what was in the photo, and she left school, and she never went back to that school.
It went viral. It literally spread everywhere. The local newspaper did a story on this, and they said it was shared with probably hundreds of kids. You know, and not just in Rahteah's school, not just in Cole Harbour High, but with the whole school district, high schools in the whole city.
That's when it started, and as soon as she became, I call it being a target, everyone started saying things to her. No one came around anymore.
That happened on a Thursday. Friday, Rahteah had a nervous breakdown.
We went to the police the next day.
So she went to the police station with her mom. She sat down, she made a statement to the police.
She gave her statement for 2 hours, and then a few days later, they called to say that we gave it to the wrong person.
The police said that officer you gave your statement to wasn't authorized to take the statement, so you have to come make it again.
So she had to do that again for 10 hours.
And between those 2 periods, even as someone who's been really intoxicated will know, things can come back to you. And that's when it came back to her that she remembers saying no to somebody. What they did was they took the 2 statements, they looked at them both and said, well, these aren't the same. You're confused.
If there's any discrepancy in those 2 statements, they used that against her.
Almost right away in this investigation, they started to treat Rahteah like she was the person that they were going to investigate.
The police investigated for almost a year. The police did not seize the cell phones or the laptops or anything belonging to any of the boys involved.
4 males assaulting Rahteah, and not one of those 4 males was ever brought into a police station for an interview.
What about cell phones? Did they seize cell phones?
They never seized a single cell phone off of anybody.
We had to get the photo for the police.
They had this picture, they had the story that went along with the picture. They never went to the school to try to stop it, and they knew who had it, they knew who was spreading it, and the police took no measures whatsoever, not a single thing. It almost seems like this classic example of making a decision about sexual assault right at the very start. You look at the overwhelming evidence that was available to the police in this case, that's the only thing that makes any sense to me.
The person in charge of the investigation, I asked her if she interviewed the males. She said, no, she's interviewed people that had the photo. And that didn't make sense to me. Why would you interview everybody around them so that they can get together and get their story down pat? I would assume that you would go directly to them and separate them and get their stories. And she said, this isn't CSI, Leah. We don't do that.
I hated it when they said that to us. This isn't CSI. CSI ends in arrests. CSI ends in someone going in and enforcing the law. So we know it's not CSI. Believe me, we know. If the police are going to keep telling people this isn't CSI, they should change their motto on their badge to that. RCMP, this isn't CSI.
She treated me like I had no business to ask. She actually said to me that I don't have to tell you anything. Those were her exact words to me. So I stopped speaking to that police officer and I went above her, to her supervisor, and above him to the person in charge of the unit. I remember speaking to him and begging him. He said, well, make sure she's in counseling and put her in sports. And I said, you don't understand. Sports is not the answer. She's in therapy. Right now, she wants some answers as to what are you guys doing in her case. They said it didn't look promising for the sexual assault because it's more of a he said, she said. You mean to tell me that this picture's out there and you're just going to say that, you know, we're working on it?
If they have a picture like that, and police sit there and say, we don't have enough evidence to support a charge of sexual assault, then we have police officers in this city who don't understand what sexual assault is.
Meanwhile, Rahtaeh was going through all this.
The picture just kept circulating, kept showing up here. And
during that year, we watched Rahteah turn into literally a ghost.
She said, I'm too young to deal with these emotions. People they just wouldn't leave her alone.
She lost everything. Everything she'd worked for in school. Her dreams were down the drain, you know. She lost all her friends.
And then she would really upset, like, where are my friends? She said, I know I have family that love me, but where are my friends? And I couldn't answer that.
She switched to my school. As the picture would follow her, the bullying would start too with the girls at the school, because girls we like to call people names, apparently.
What were the names they'd call her?
Oh gosh, here we go. Am I allowed to say that on camera?
Yeah.
A whore, slut. I had some girl call her a prostitute one time. I have no idea why. Just stuff like that, pretty much.
So it was mostly girls who were bullying her?
Yeah. Not guys, it's mostly girls. I watched her get bullied. She was standing right next to me, and there was nothing I could do about it. That's what's sad. Girls would come and like get right up in her face and like physical, like tried to get her to fight them and stuff. And Rahtaeh was just like didn't want to fight, obviously. So she's just, oh, I don't want to fight, I don't want to fight. And they'd be trying to fight her and stuff. That's what the girls at my school used to do. And I'd be standing right next to her, and it's like, well, what do I say? Like, some of the people that were trying to fight her were people I had known for years too, so I didn't really know what to do about it. She had this one girl at the time that was really giving her a hard time. The forwarded messages from this girl of what she would say to her and stuff, and it was just horrible. She was so mean to her. Like, pretty much telling her to go kill herself.
In March, she actually tied a belt around her neck, and she was actually going to hang herself. When she was going to do it, she heard the car pull up. So after that, she had a bit of a breakdown.
She was afraid she was going to hurt herself.
I drove her to the emergency IWK hospital downtown Halifax.
We thought, oh, this is great. She's going to get the help she needs in the hospital.
I left that hospital that night crying and upset, but also feeling relieved because I'm thinking in my mind, you know, she's got help now. These are the professionals. They're going to change her suicidal thoughts into something positive.
That was another bad experience. There's no trauma specialist. When she did act out in there, they put her in a lockdown unit, and they put her in a room, and they left her in there for 24 hours by herself. And nobody went to talk to her.
That's kind of a story in itself. At the children's hospital, the staff at the hospital stripped her at one point. She said that it was male staff members who stripped her and locked her in a room, basically like wearing just maybe her underwear.
They took her clothes off her, and they wrote down she was screaming, you know, give me my clothes back. And she's saying, why are those men here? I'm naked. And that's in a hospital where she went to get help.
They treated her like a delinquent instead of being treated for the trauma.
The hospital came out and said, that doesn't happen here in this hospital. Then what happened is all these other parents came up and said, wait a sec, that happened to my daughter too. Men were there when her clothes were off. A day later, the hospital reiterated, well, that does happen here in extreme circumstances, but it never happened to Rahteah Parsons. Then a witness went to the press and said I was there when Rahteah Parsons was there, and I remember her screaming for her clothes back, and I remember men being there. And this is a sexual assault victim. It was ridiculous. She ended up staying there for 5 weeks, and I will say it was a stupid, stupid thing for me to ever leave her in that hospital. I wish to God I had taken her home that day. Everything was worse when she left there. She was far more angry.
She learned to cut her wrists and her arms in there. She felt that she was suicidal the day they discharged her. And
Why would they discharge her if she's still feeling suicidal?
they felt she was there long enough.
I'm in the room alone with Rahteah, and I looked at her, and she looked at me, and she goes, Dad, I'm gonna die.
We begged them when she left to put her somewhere. They signed her up for a drug rehab program. Yeah.
She said, I don't want to go to that. It's stupid. I'm not a drug addict. And I said, I know, but I said, there's going to be other help there. There'll be counselors and people you can talk to. She goes, yeah, but I'm not a drug addict. This is all about drugs. And she goes, I'm not a drug addict. They have a drug treatment program, so whatever the mental health issue is, it's got to be drugs. You know, it's a rubber stamp, you know, drugs, drugs, drugs. You know, a kid coming in here and they're suicidal and they're traumatized, they're a drug addict. So I took her there on the first day. She promised me she'd give it a chance. She called me up 20 minutes later, and she was really, really upset. And I said, oh, okay, I've seen her like this before, where you know. A kid from Cole Harbour High, a boy who knows what happened to her and is friends with the kids who assaulted her, was sitting there glaring at her in her first meeting for drug counseling. Did no one ever read her file? She came over here to live with us after she got out of the hospital, and her stay was so bad there. A few months after she left, she was upstairs here, and she was crying and upset, and I heard her ask for me, and I went up to her bedroom, and her arms were cut up, and her sheets were all bloody, and I'm just like, oh, God, Christ. One of the worst decisions I ever made in my life was putting my daughter in that hospital.
This whole time, we're still dealing with police, and then finally he said, there's not going to be any charges for the sexual assault or the child pornography.
Police laid out their case before the Crown prosecutors, and they got an almost immediate no, that the prosecutors were not interested in taking it to court. Police went back and told Rahteah and her parents. Rahteah was, according to her parents, she was devastated.
Oh, she was outraged. She stomped around, she was angry, she was yelling. How dare they, like, everyone's gonna still think I'm a slut. And they're walking around smiling, and look what we got away with. The injustice of it all was really, that set her back. But then she tried to go back to school. She said, I wanna go because I feel I have enough friends around me now to support me, that I'm strong enough. And she wasn't allowed in Cole Harbour High. They wouldn't allow her to go there. I sat there in the office, and he said, she can't come back to this school. And I said, why? And he said, she transferred out of this area. You're not allowed to transfer back into this area. I said, well, her home is here, and you are aware of the reason why she transferred out of here. And he said, oh, I'm well aware of why. So I said, okay, so the boys are walking in this school. They're allowed to be here, and you're gonna tell us that she's not allowed to be here. So you're victimizing her all over again.
It never really let up with the texting and the harassment. She had been taking records of all the things, of various things that were sent to her, and she would send them to the police. And when the police came back after all that time and just said, you know, there's no case, we can't take it forward, she got really upset that one night in April and, you know, tried to kill herself, which her parents, I think, really never truly believed she would do.
That evening, I was downstairs in bed. She came in, and her friend Jenna was living here at the time, too. I could hear Rahteah's voice raising. She was on the phone with her boyfriend. And when she got off the phone, I guess she said to Jenna, you know, fuck this, I'm going to the bathroom, I'm gonna kill myself. I'm gonna hang myself. And she locked herself in the bathroom. Jenna said she tried to open the doors, talking to her through the door, saying, Rahteah, open the door, you know, I love you. And she said, all of a sudden, Rahteah stopped talking to me. And I came up and grabbed something in the drawer in the way to get right into the but I could feel her weight on the back of the door. I honestly didn't think there was anything in the bathroom that she could hang herself on. So I was kind of surprised to feel her weight. It's like you go into autopilot. I said to Jenna, get me scissors, give me your phone, we need to dial 911. I cut the belt off her neck and I had her laying on the floor. Jason started working on her. He could do CPR and he did that. And then they came in and worked on her for half an hour. So it was 45 minutes without any pulse. When she got to the hospital, I remember one nurse was pretty blunt with us and said, like, this doesn't look good and she's probably going to die.
I can hardly remember it, you know. It was such a blur. But I think I just screamed, my daughter's dead, right? And God, I'm out the door as fast as we could. And they said, who are you? I said, I'm Glenn Canning. Rahteah Parsons is here. She's my daughter. But when they buzzed me in, you know, I could see the far end of the hospital. Here comes this doctor walking really fast, right? He's holding his hands up like this, right? And he said, what do you know? Just tell me what you know. I said, well, I know that she hanged herself, and I know that they're having a problem finding any brain activity. He said, I'm just going to be honest. This will be as grim as it'll get, and she's not going to recover from this. I went in to see her laying there, you know, and it's something I regret because on the way home on the Wednesday night, she asked if we could stop at McDonald's. But I was too tired. It was after 9:30. I just wanted to go home. I said, let's just go home. It's too late to eat junk food, blah, blah. And I remember when I went over and kissed her and I whispered, you know, wake up, I'll take you to McDonald's. It was a long 3 or 4 days in the hospital, man. She never woke up. Her mom went home and wrote a message on Facebook that she lost her daughter following a sexual assault and people bullying her. It was just a Facebook post, and it seemed like it triggered something in people. You hear about viral things happening on the internet, the list just absolutely exploded. I don't know why.
I wrote that first story, and then everything really blew up. It just got much bigger than I ever thought it was going to get. And then Anonymous got involved.
Greetings, citizens of the world. We are Anonymous. Yet again we bring to you another tragic story of yet another young life taken from us so early. Rahteah Parsons, 17, leaves.
The next thing I knew, Anonymous got involved with the story, and I'm not sure how they did, but I've heard that they looked at me and her mother and what we were writing as a cry for help.
Our thoughts and prayers go out to her family and friends. Rahteah was a victim of gang rape, also a victim of constant bullying.
I took it personal. It wasn't in like another country or another city. It was right in Halifax, where I grew up all my life. I have a daughter, same age as Rahteah, and I hear they take her phone and they investigate her. They didn't even speak to the boys and didn't talk to them, didn't take their devices, didn't check their accounts, didn't do anything. I'd be upset too.
They would release YouTube videos every couple of days, and they knew a lot about the case really quickly. They do this thing called doxing, where they go and trace somebody's presence online.
We can confirm the identities of 2 of the 4 alleged rapists. If we were able to locate these boys within 2 hours, it will not be long before someone else finds them.
At one point, they threatened to release the identities of the boys involved.
It is important for Nova Scotians to have faith in their justice system. Better act fast.
You know, they present themselves as kind of this Robin Hood of the justice system, and it really caught the imagination of people.
When Anonymous got involved, it became even bigger still.
Our demands are simple. We want the RCMP to take immediate legal action against the individuals in question. You will be held accountable for your failure to act.
I couldn't even tell you the amount of interviews, BBC, CNN, stations in Japan, Colombia, China, Russian news stations, all across Canada, every major media company you can think of. I have a friend in Saudi Arabia, and he wrote me a message, "What happened? You're in the news over here in Saudi Arabia." What ended up happening, people were realizing if Anonymous is involved, then they can't assume they're going to be hidden. One of the males who was there that night was realizing that shit. People are going to know who I am. They're going to release my name. I need to tell my side of the story.
I received a Facebook message from one of the males. He was kind of scared for his safety after Rahteah died.
He said, you know, everyone hates me now. I don't know what to do. I'm crying. You know, I need to talk to you. And Lee was like, no, I'm not interested in having a conversation with you. If you got anything to say, you say it right here, right now. And as amazing as it sounds, he wrote this long Facebook confession. Me and were up and having sex with her, and she was okay. And about 15 minutes after left, Rahteah looked like she was going to get sick, and we both helped her over so she could get sick, and she was out the window for about 5 minutes, and we're asking if she was okay. She said, "I'm fine. You guys keep going." I told go ahead, and then he told me to go ahead, so I went again. We picked her up, carried her over to the window, and she leaned out. She started to throw up. He said after about 5 minutes, "Who's going first?" You know, and what he's talking about having sex with her. Again, I'm not sure if it was my phone or his, but the picture was taken without her noticing. Me being a drunk idiot, I posed for the photo. After she got out of the window, we laid her on the bed to go to sleep.
You could have sat what he told me right on top of what she told me. He filled in all the blanks.
And the other two boys, we asked them to help us bring her to the spare room, so we woke her up, and she didn't want to go downstairs, so we picked her up, and she hit him in the face once. Then we kept bugging her to get up, and she finally did and walked down the stairs to the spare room. She laid in the bed, and I remember telling her stuff to kiss him and stuff. Asked everyone to leave the room. I left the room and sat on the couch, and he came out 20 minutes later with a smirk on his face. I had curfew, so I told him I had to go home. He walked me to the door, gave me props. I woke up the next day, and he told me that she had sex with and Christ, this is him saying, I raped Rahteah Parsons. Leah did a screen capture, Rahteah's mom did a screen capture of it and called the police.
And then Anonymous put out this YouTube video saying they had gotten a confession. They said to the Justice Minister of Nova Scotia, if you don't open this case again and see justice done in a courtroom, we're going to come after you and we're going to expose the boys' identities.
Since the police are useless, we as citizens must stand together and say no more. Remember this day.
They opened the case again.
The RCMP did reopen the investigation. They were very specific to say that it was not about any information that had come in online or anything like that, that it was old-fashioned people coming forward from the community. They involved the child pornography specialists this time around, once she had died.
I'm very thankful that they did what they did. The police had months and months to do something to protect Rahteah. They watched that image be spread all over the community, all over Halifax, and they didn't do anything about it at all. Nothing.
Courtroom door is now open. Court number 4.
They did charge 2 people. They probably could have charged more. One got charged with making and distributing, and the other one with distributing. Again, they said they're not going to go with the sexual assault.
It should have been sexual assault. Child pornography, it's bittersweet. I even asked them, I said, well, what about sexual assault? They have the new Facebook message that came through. What about sexual assault? They're saying she was drunk and throwing up. And he said, it's just not going to happen.
Why did the police not take this as a confession? I don't get it.
I don't know. And he's admitting that Rahteah was in a state where she couldn't walk and she's throwing up. Then she's not in a position to give consent. That is just the basic flat-out law in Canada. You have to be in a state where you are capable of giving consent. A girl throwing up who needs to be carried is not in a position to do that. These are the words right out of that kid's mouth. And the police knew this before my daughter died. I can't get over this.
It fascinated me how a case could become such a train wreck. The police, it seemed they really struggled with any evidence that was online or electronic, which is how all the evidence is. These are all teenagers, all they do. Like, everything they do is on their phones. All the officers didn't even have internet access on their computers at work, or it was highly restricted. They couldn't go on Facebook, they couldn't look things up the same way, you or I could. Another thing I looked at was the attitude they took towards sexual assault. From what I gathered of the police investigation, they really kind of would ask people, do you believe she consented? The biggest example was when they interviewed that other girl who had been there that night.
The other girl who was there with Rahteah, where the hell's the other girl, right? She knew both of these boys. She had dated both of them. And she came upstairs and she was mad and angry and she left.
They treated her as a witness, even though she hadn't been in the room. She definitely wasn't there when the photo was taken or anything like that. They asked her if she thought Rahteah had consented. She said yes. And I asked why she was so sure that Rahteah had consented. And she said because one of the boys' moms had been home that night. Her bedroom was down the hall, and that she hadn't woken up. This girl said, if you're getting raped by one person or two people, or, in this allegation it was 4 people, you're going to be screaming and you're going to be crying. The mom didn't wake up, and therefore Rahteah could not have been raped because she hadn't screamed, which completely ignores the fact that in the criminal code, of course, you can be raped if you're unconscious. What surprised me when I was reporting on it was not only how uninformed the teenagers were about those issues, but their parents. I had adults ask me if somebody is unconscious, if that makes it rape, which it does, even because they drank themselves into being unconscious, is it still rape? Which it is. If somebody's unconscious, they can't consent. Rahteah had said that she had drank the equivalent of 8 or 9 shots or drinks over the course of the night, and she was 15 at the time. There was a lot of uncertainty over how drunk is too drunk. But even beyond that, people sometimes didn't understand that unconscious makes it rape. That's a very basic thing under Canadian law. They really didn't know where to start, and neither did their parents. And it seems like, in a way, neither did the police. They weren't trying to gather information. They never interviewed the boys ever while she was alive. They never interviewed them until they charged them, months after her death. In this case, it was unbalanced in how they had focused so much on her. If they can't handle that case, how well are they handling any sexual assault case?
When the police were still doing their investigation, a young lady contacted Rahteah and said, is this one of the boys who did this to you? And Rahteah said, yeah, it was. And the girl said, well, he did the same thing to me. And Rahteah was just like, you gotta call the police. Can you please come forward? I'll go with everything like this. And the girl said, after what I saw, what happened to you, I don't want to. We're basically setting an example for other victims out there. Well, there's not a photo of my case. I don't have a confession in my case. So what chance in hell do I have of justice if this girl who had all that evidence didn't get any either? We quite literally really do blame victims. That's why it's so easy to get away with this.
Rape is the only crime that I can think of that the victim becomes the accused.
If I was mugged downtown Halifax and someone took my wallet and the police investigated me, why was I there at nighttime? Did I have a beer? Is it a misunderstanding? Do I give to charity? If I give to charity, then I'm used to giving my money away. Look at the statistics too. Nova Scotia right now has the worst conviction and charge rate for sexual assault in Canada. You have people going to jail in Nova Scotia for a matter of months when they are found guilty of rape. On average, by the time a man ends up even in a courtroom, he has 6 victims behind him. 95% of rape victims, they believe, are telling the truth. So that means 5% of the men, or the rapists, are telling the truth. We should treat the cases like that, rather than go right off the bat and treat it, okay, his word, her word, she loses.
You see it over and over again in any article you ever read about a rape situation. All you have to do is go to the comments to see it's alive and well.
People are ignorant and abusive, and they're trolls on the internet. Someone wrote up a Facebook page called Rahteah Parsons. They stole pictures off her Facebook page, and they photoshopped her eyes so they're bugging out. They photoshopped belts around her neck. They made comments like, hey, Rahteah, how's it hanging? And it would show a picture of a dead body hanging in a tree. And it was probably the vilest, sickest, most disgusting thing I've ever seen in my life. I wrote Facebook and I said, you know, look, my daughter just died. Her name's Rahteah Parsons. It's all over the news. It's a huge international story. I want this Facebook page taken down. It's mocking her death. It's insulting and disgusting. And Facebook wrote back to me and they said, we reviewed that page and it doesn't violate our standards. Facebook, you've got to be joking. If this is your standard, why don't you just admit you don't have any standards? So I wrote something on my website because now I know that Anonymous is following the story. I got an email from some weird email address in Russia, something like that, and it just said, Glenn, read this. And I went and looked at the Rahteah Parsons page. This was like a couple hours after. There was a message there that this page hacked by Anonymous. All the images were gone. There was just one single post there, and it said, the person who made this page is this person. And it was the photograph of the older sister of the boy in that photograph raping my daughter. This was his older sister. She's 21 years old, and she made a page like that to mock Rahteah's death. Then what happened, I got a death threat on YouTube. This is my YouTube channel, and every video about Rahteah, even videos we would do where she was just a child and we're just trying to put something out there as a memorial to her, you know, they would show up on there with their filth and their ignorance and abuse and really, really just mean stuff. You were there her whole life. Did you try ever to be a good dad? You're talking to me like you're some kind of important dad. You probably raped your daughter her whole life. It's no wonder she was so fucked in the head. And they write this stuff to me. His daughter is a slut. You know, she was all tight until everyone had sex with her. She sucked and had sex with every guy in the city. Your daughter didn't even get one high school credit. Of course she didn't. She fell apart. I don't know where it came from for somebody just to be so goddamn mean. Their username was I am Karma 902. I took the I am Karma 902 thing to mean local person because our area code is 902. I also took the fact that they knew a little bit about this case to see that this may be somebody who's involved here. Well, here it is here, right? Keep talking shit, because I know your face, your car, where you live, what you do, so keep getting lippy bud, and you might be going to visit your daughter. Have a good day, Glen Canning. You're gonna join your daughter. I screen captured it, and I went to the Halifax police. Police here treated that very seriously. You know, they went to the RCMP in Ottawa. They went to the FBI in Washington, D.C. The FBI went into Google and with a warrant said, we want the IP address of who made this comment. From Google, it went back to the FBI, and then it went back to the RCMP, and then it went to the police here. And then they said, you know, we made an arrest in this case, and they said his name, which I don't think I can legally say. And they told me who it was. And the person who it was is the person who's in the photograph with Rahteah.
Same kid doing the thumbs up.
Same guy doing the thumbs up, giving a big thumbs up with a big smile. Isn't that sad? You did enough damage to our daughter that she ended up without a will to live, and you got to be so filthy and ugly about it. You even reach out to us when we're grieving and start insulting us and threatening us too. There's no remorse with this kid at all. Bullying today is so much far worse and so much more devastating to people. It's not something you can get away from. I was bullied grade 7, I was beat up in school, but I could go home and I'm safe at home. Nowadays, the way kids communicate, there is no getting away from it. It's everywhere. And people take out cell phones and they take a video of you getting beat up, or they're all laughing at you and calling you a loser. And next thing you know, there's 100 people telling you to go kill yourself on Facebook and on your profile and sending tweets out with the video on there of you getting beat up.
Girls can get away with bullying so much more, but more and more young girls are committing suicide because of it, because it's so easy to call a girl a slut over Facebook. It's so easy to send her a message and tell her how much of a whore she is. Something needs to be done about it, honestly. I see it all the time.
After Rahteah's death, you know, there were some responses by a lot of politicians.
You're just sickened seeing a story like this.
Stephen Harper said, you know, we got to stop calling this bullying and start calling it for what it is, criminal harassment. And I couldn't have agreed more.
Bullying to me has a connotation of kind of kids misbehaving. What we are dealing with in some of these circumstances is simply criminal activity.
There's a great big upheaval and screaming about Bill C-13 that, oh my God, you know, it's going to be an invasion of privacy and all our stuff is going to be available to everybody. No, it's not. It addresses a few different things. One of them is the distribution of intimate images without consent. Peter MacKay, Minister of Justice, has referred to that as Rahteah's Law because when that photo was being spread all over, police came up and said, well, you know, that's not against the law. right? You know, you failed marriage or relationship, and they have images of you that would be very embarrassing. Revenge porn, I think it's called, and they post them all over the internet to humiliate people. It's not illegal, and it should be. Another one is going to address issues of the police being able to go to internet service providers and get information they need when crimes are being committed online, and to get that information quickly, which I think is going to make a huge difference, and that's why I support this law. They could have had this kid arrested in a matter of days, hours even, if the right laws were in place. It should not take 8-10 months, what it took in my case, for a death threat. What if I was a vulnerable person and I was actually really afraid for my life? What if it was like an ex-husband who's been threatening to murder me? You know, you want to wait 8 months to hear back from Google? Much rather that had been like 8 hours. We can't just sit here with the whole, we're going to protect free speech crap. You're not protecting people who really are using free speech to make the world better. You're just protecting a bunch of trolls and criminals and pedophiles and child molesters and rapists. These are places you live in too. The employees there live in these kind of communities. What kind of communities do they want? It's not free speech, it's hate speech.
He's pled guilty. That's actually happened, and it's emotional.
Do you think you're closer to getting justice for Rahteah?
There'll never be justice for Rahteah. She just wanted to be validated instead of being blamed for her own crime. And so the fact that he has pled guilty has, part of me feels some solace in that.
His guilty plea here today tells everyone the police knew child porn was being spread around Halifax and they didn't do anything to stop it. And also Cole Harbour High. They knew child porn was being distributed in the halls of their school and they didn't do anything to stop it at all. And what that means really is they did nothing to protect a victim. And that to me is just wrong. That big question has to be asked. Why wasn't something done when it would have made a difference?
Wasn't in your way. The stones, I started by painting memory stones for Rahteah. It's a way for me to feel calm. It's just to paint. So we place these everywhere we go. Something very spiritual about the stones.
She grew up, part of her here in this park. It played a big role with Rahteah. It's very fitting that this park is so beautiful. It was really nice. People say, you know, time heals all wounds, but it doesn't. You know, a big, big part of me died in that hospital room with my daughter.
I felt like I was having an out-of-body experience. We already decided we'd be organ donors, and then they said the recipients aren't all ready. And that was a real dilemma for me at that moment. I didn't really feel comfortable with them keeping her body alive. I almost changed my mind. I'm lucky we did because one of them was a teenager that received her heart. So that child would have died if I would have changed my mind. And then there's 5 lives she saved.
So, in spite of all this, you know, grief and upset, it is nice to know that she is still out there today. Some of her, anyways, is still out there, very much alive, and has changed people's lives for the better, for sure.
It's happening everywhere. I have 32 countries on my page just because this is a global issue. Rape, suicide, the cyberbullying.
As long as we let kids do this kind of stuff like that, we're going to have kids get out of high school and go out there into the world, and they're just going to be mean. And they're going to think, you know, getting your way is about bullying, tormenting, terrorizing people who are in your way. And that's shit. I don't want to live in a society like that. You think, oh, some username like I am Karma 902 on YouTube means you're hidden? Well, he's going to be in court for criminal harassment and uttering death threats. You're not anonymous. You're not. If you think you're anonymous, anonymous will get you.
Rahteah's peer group that she grew up with, who would have had the same sex ed classes that she did, they had never heard a word about consent in school.
First of all, don't teach women not to wear clothes that suggest being raped. Teach the boys not to rape. There's a good idea. Secondly, the whole suicide topic, nobody really talks about it. Honestly, in the entire 3 years I was in high school, I think the topic was brought up once. That's sad. It should be part of our education. People should know that there's people they can turn to talk to if they're considering suicide, whereas we don't have any of that. My school wanted to completely forget that she even existed. No one ever once offered her support or ever offered her help. And I think maybe if they did, then maybe she would have had a chance of still being here today.
Have you ever blamed yourself?
I probably went through a phase where I felt, not blame myself, felt guilty. That wasn't enough, that what if? And then every time I felt like that, I would, I feel this like, almost like a voice right over my right ear. Don't do that, stop that. And it feels like Rahteah's right there, like stomping her foot.
I think this is so important to reach these kids and say, look, it's never a victim's fault, ever. It's not a victim's fault for rape or sexual assault, and it certainly isn't a victim's fault when it comes to cyberbullying. It's a crime. It's the criminal's fault.
Goodbye. Seagull.